Okay, just for the video watchers, I do have a presentation here to go along with my speech that I will link with my speech in the assignment. So most of you guys in the room are sexually active, and being sexually active, if you don't want children or you are not looking to have children, at least right now, we are using contraceptives, or at least I would hope so, because then, who knows? You might get pregnant. So, and the whole point of this speech is bringing a woman who brought awareness to contraceptives and women being more careful. So today we have so many different types of contraceptives. We have birth control pills, we have IUDs, there's spermicides, there's condoms, etc. There's so many things available to us. But back then, in the time that I'm going to be talking about, is women weren't even educated on contraceptives, even men. So there was a time where it was illegal for women to even be educated on safe sex and had no idea that a contraceptive even existed. So to bring that to point, today I will be talking to you about Margaret Sanger and her life accomplishments. So over the past couple weeks, I've completed some research on a woman named Margaret, and she is a huge women's rights activist that fought for us to have the rights that we have today as women. Sorry, Cole. I will be covering the life of her and her most major accomplishments, because obviously I could talk all day about the stuff that she did. So I'd like to begin to talk about Margaret's beginning of her life. So Margaret was born in 1879 in Corning, New York, to Michael Hennessy and Anna Carell. They lived in poverty, and Margaret was actually the sixth child of 11 children. Margaret's mother had a total of 11 pregnancies that ended in children, but she also had 7 miscarriages. So that is 18 total pregnancies, which is commonly unheard of. So saying that, obviously, I have never been pregnant, but seeing my friends who have, one pregnancy makes a woman very weak and tired. So imagine 18 pregnancies. So Margaret watched her mother weaken as every pregnancy happened. Margaret's mother ended up dying at age 50, which is pretty young, and watching her mom die so young, she realized that she wanted to take a stop and take a stand to show and research, to fight for women's rights and find out if there was a way to stop women from becoming so weak. So in 1896, Margaret decided to go to college. Then she completed her nurse's training at the White Plains Hospital in 1902. And she became a visiting nurse on the Lower East Side of New York, and she decided to be a visiting nurse, which she would see women in poverty. Doing this job, she did see a lot of women who would have unwanted pregnancies, and women that would even have illegal abortions, and which caused to death. So Margaret wanted to take a stop to this, and she decided to leave her career of nursing. She had enough, and she wanted to dedicate her life to speaking up for women and finding the right education to educate women and to how to avoid unwanted pregnancies. Now that I've shared a little bit of Margaret's upbringing, I'd like to share some of her many accomplishments that led her become the activist she is known for today. So in 1912, she left her career as a nurse and began advocating for women. In 1913, Margaret decided to go to Europe because in the United States, contraceptives were illegal. So the only way she could learn was by leaving the United States. So in 1914, she did come back, and she wrote a few things. The first being What Every Girl Should Know. And then later in 1914, she wrote a magazine that was actually published in the newspapers called The Women Rebel, that was later discontinued because of it being illegal. And then she went a step further and wrote Family Limitations, which was a pamphlet that showed 6 different types of contraceptive methods. Actually, Margaret had to flee before even publishing it and gave it to her friends because it was illegal. Standing up for women's rights and educating women on the topic of contraceptives was illegal, so it came at a price for Margaret's freedom. So I am going to quote something that is the Federal Comstock Law of 1873. This has made it illegal to send obscene, lewd, or lascivious, immoral, or indecent publications through the mail. The law also made it a misdemeanor for anyone to sell, give away, or possess an obscene book, pamphlet, picture, drawing, or advertisement. And this is from Burnett, 2009. So obviously this goes against everything that Margaret published. So according to that law, they were looking to convict Margaret. So Margaret fled again to Europe in 1916. So Margaret did come back after her charges were dropped, and then she decided to open the first birth control clinic in Brownsville, Brooklyn, and New York, and this is in 1916. The clinic was it was open for a little bit over a week, and then it was closed for being, of course, illegal, and Margaret was sent to jail for 30 days. So now that I discussed Margaret's accomplishments, I'm going to talk about how it led her to deal with the law, and I will discuss more of her bigger accomplishments in women's rights. So when Margaret created the first birth control clinic, it was obviously her biggest accomplishment today, but it did make her go to jail, but it opened many people's attention. So honestly, her going to jail was kind of a blessing because it made people be more aware and it gave her support. So Margaret decided to appeal her sentencing, and it later did get denied, but with her appeal, it did allow doctors to start prescribing contraceptives to women with medical diagnosis. This was an accomplishment in Margaret's eyes. So Margaret did make the term birth control popular in the United States because that is a term that came from England at the time. So when Margaret no longer had the birth control clinic, she decided to gather a group of women and she founded the American Birth Control League in 1921. And she did serve as president until 1928. So the American Birth Control League was another huge part of Margaret Sanger's legacy, and it's not commonly known today. So the American Birth Control League is one of the parent organizations of the Birth Control Federation of America. And in 1929, she formed the National Committee on the Federal Legislation for birth control. So when she created this, it now allowed doctors to prescribe birth control with no conditions at all in the United States. And this became illegal in 1936. So, and at this time also, Margaret did have her clinic back open in Brooklyn, and it still stands there today. And in 1942, the American Birth Control League became Planned Parenthood Federation of America, and Margaret was the honorary chairman. And all of us know Planned Parenthood. I mean, you see it everywhere in every city. So then she was the first president of the International Planned Parenthood Federation in 1953, and this was international. So Margaret had many accomplishments and did lead to the huge start of Planned Parenthood, and which stands today. So Margaret Sanger passed away sadly at age 86 in 1966. But just 6 years before she passed, the first oral contraceptive pill was approved by the FDA. This was a huge dream of Margaret's, and she was so happy to be able to see that dream come true. Margaret did have funding that was put towards that project, but obviously she was older, and she was just happy to at least see it through. Margaret Sanger played a vital role in allowing women to have rights that we have today, and provided education about different contraceptive methods even when it was illegal. Throughout this speech, I've discussed the major events in Margaret Sanger's life, and without this woman who fought for other women to have rights and even went to jail for us, we would not be where we are today with the advanced contraceptives we have without her education that brought us here. So without Margaret opening that first birth control clinic in 1916, even though it was closed, that birth control clinic became known as the nonprofit organization Planned Parenthood, and that may have never existed if it wasn't for her. With Sanger's resilience and education for birth control, Planned Parenthood has gone to become the nation's largest provider of sex education and provide affordable health care. So